we had sort of shaped three key areas that we thought reflected where we were at as a business. And this was about being visionary, being human, being brave, which I think are traits that, even if they don't know Virgin that well, I think they can resonate with it, even on the outside looking in. But we then went and said, right, okay, we need to go and really engage with the rest of our teams on this and really get from them, what does it mean to work at Virgin? And we did some really cool stuff, as you'd expect. We did a big listen day across a number of our different sites. We really heard firsthand from our people about what was the good, the bad, the ugly of working at Virgin. And it reinforced those three traits around what does it take to be brave? And we used our people's words to describe it, not corporate language, which I have a kind of real aversion to, because people don't believe it. Yeah, guess what? They read it and think, huh? Yeah. What do you mean? How does that impact what I do? Yeah. We actually use proper language that the average person looks at and goes, oh, okay, I get that, and I can really relate to it.
Hi everyone, welcome back to the HR Leaders Podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by Nikki Humphrey, who's the Chief People Officer at Virgin Group. During the episode, Nikki shares how Virgin Group are putting people at the heart of business, how they've embraced the future of work and introduced a values-led approach to flexible working, how their Dyslexic thinking campaign transformed the narrative around dyslexia, and last but not least, how Virgin Voyages have disrupted the cruise industry's working standards. As always, before we jump into the video, make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and follow on your favorite podcast platform. With that being said, let's jump in. Nikki, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Lovely to see you.
Nice to see you. I think I said to you when we first spoke that I've been stalking you on LinkedIn for a while. I don't know how people take that.
Should I be concerned?
Yeah.
Should I be concerned?
I need to change the language around it, don't I, when I say it to people as well.
It's a stalking point.
Yeah. It's a stalking point. That's a good play of words there. It's a good stalking point. Yeah. It's a certain time. I've been doing this for so long, since I was 17. I'm 35 now, and I kind of followed the careers indirectly of many leaders, and you're one of them that I've come across so many different times at different companies. So it's always nice to speak to someone after seeing you now and again. I know it sounds really weird, but that's how sad I am. I love my job that much that I follow everyone and what they're doing and where they're going. But how are you? How are things?
No, I'm good. We're having a good time. I'm at Virgin, been there for the last year, and yeah, we're having some fun.
Nice.
There's some tough bits to do, but there's loads of fun as well, which is good.
It's always going to be a combination of both. But tell everyone a little bit more about you. Did you choose HR, or did HR choose you?
Oh, it's an interesting story, really. I was at university and was studying psychology, and I had it in my mind that I was going to be an occupational psychologist. And I was, as you do back then, you're reaching out to find people that have got that type of job and what's their advice they'd give you. And I remember having this brilliant career chat with this occupational psychologist who said, that's great, Nikki, but you really need to go and get some practical experience in HR. So I thought, okay, that's interesting back then. Well, what does HR do?
Yeah.
And so I went and pursued that and never went back. I sort of split my journey into sort of three key parts, probably a reflection of how old I'm starting to get. But first part of my career was definitely, first sort of 7-8 years was, I describe as learning my trade. So really worked for, I think it was back then 3 organizations, but just really the hard stuff around HR, redundancies, hiring, just like the core skills that you kind of needed to know. And then I moved into the sort of second part of my career, was really moving and learning from middle management up to more senior leadership. And I worked in financial services. I was there during the financial crisis. Oh man. Tough, really, really tough, but actually, my gosh, in terms of building up your personal resilience, we had never seen anything like that before. And actually, I was in a HR back then, people function that was being really progressive during really, really difficult times that we could see across the world. And I was in one of the big banks, and we were needing to integrate 2 banks. HR was at the heart of it in terms of the cultural transformation, actually recreating a new bank made up of 2 banks. And I tell you what, it was, well, a career enhancing, put it like that. And so I was there for quite a chunk of my career. I moved around. The beauty of being in a large bank was you could go move in lots of different divisions that had their own sort of little mini cultures, etc. And I really got some brilliant experience, really developed my leadership sort of capability and experience, as well as also
what do you think
kept building on my HR experience.
What do you think you took away from the key skills or attributes that you took away from the work leading HR during the crisis?
The main two was one, managing your own personal resilience, and leading in ambiguity. So I mean, literally, I was at one of the banks that nearly fell over, and they got taken over, and literally we were finding out the updates of our own company on the 10 o'clock news.
Wow.
We couldn't even get internal updates because they couldn't respond quickly enough, because it literally was crashing around us. And it was really interesting seeing other leaders, what I perceived to have been really senior leaders, really struggling to cope with that uncertainty, the personal impact on themselves, both financially, job-wise. And I learnt loads. And interesting enough, little did I realise that would set me up in really good stead to actually what we've experienced the last 2 or 3 years.
Isn't it?
And when we had all COVID hit us, I literally felt like I'd been taken straight back. I was like in a time machine. I suddenly thought, these are all the skills and experience that I was using back in 2007, 2008. It's quite extraordinary how different, obviously, but how relatable. There was so much, so things around your the ambiguity, not knowing what's happening next, how you personally manage that and be resilient to it, really kicked in. So that was kind of the second part. And then the final part of I guess the journey I've been on has really been what I describe as moving into kind of running my own gig. So this is really holding chief people officer roles. I moved out of financial services, moved to Virgin Atlantic. And since then I've been there. I've been at John Lewis, and now I'm at Virgin, and absolutely love it. Absolutely love
Amazing.
Having my own playground.
I love you mentioned the fact that that prepared you for the pandemic, because I saw various leaders either rise to the top like yourself, who had been there during, for example, the 2008 crash, and they were prepared. They could lead through ambiguity. They had that resilience, etc. And it was a make or break moment for many companies, but also leaders. And do you think that you could be an effective chief people officer if you hadn't gone through that?
Oh, good question. Look, I just think it really helps build up your breadth of skills and experience so that you find it more manageable in the new situations that hit you. And you can't take away what your experiences are, but I sort of go, when I think about a lot of advice I give to others, it's always about going to, as much as you can, push yourself into many different experiences, because you take so much value. Don't always stay in what you're doing. I mean, it sort of comes back to that. So I definitely, I look back, and I don't suppose I appreciated at the time how much all of the financial crisis gave me in terms of broader experience that you don't then necessarily use in normal business as usual, but you absolutely go and use in those more kind of crisis moments. Yeah,
I think it helped me, because I was in sales during the time. Half the company got laid off during that crisis in 2008, but I didn't get laid off because I was a revenue generating function. So they were like, okay, we need to keep making money. So I was one of the very few people that didn't get let go, which was kind of strange, because I saw so many of my friends, colleagues just go. But so when it came to the next to COVID, which was obviously in its own crisis, I then, because of what I learned during 2008, I used it as an opportunity. So when all of the other companies were closing down and laying people off, I actually went full steam in the other direction of hiring people, completely digitizing the business so I could, capitalize on the moment. And we 4x'd our revenue during that time. And I would never have been able to do that if I hadn't gone through that before, if that makes sense.
I think you feel braver and you feel kind of stronger to go and give it a go, because you realize that it is an opportunity.
I know recently you've gone through sort of a big sort of transformation in regards to the company's values and traits, purpose and mission. What before we jump into the details, what was it that made you decide to go on that journey? So
we at Virgin, we have had our purpose for 15, 20 years, changing business for good. I mean, it's like the core of what Virgin as a brand wants to impact, and that ripples out in any of our Virgin companies that we have. And so we had that was just part of what we do. And I think it's fair to say we had over the years started to sort of build up lots of versions of, well, actually, what are some of your brand values and what are some of the behaviors you want? And I would say kind of probably complicated the landscape. And I am a firm believer of we must always think about how do you turn the complex into the simple, because actually, we're all very busy people, and people need to hear and be able to take stuff easily and quickly, because there's just so much in people's life, isn't it? There's just so much kind of stimulus that's given your way. And so we had an opportunity to go and say, right, okay, we know our purpose is what our purpose, changing business for good. That has not changed at all. But actually, how do we go and articulate clearly about how we want to show up? What are our traits that come with that? And we had sort of shaped 3 key areas that we thought reflected where we were at as a business. And this was about being visionary, being human, being brave, which I think are traits that if they don't know Virgin that well, I think they can resonate with it, even on the outside looking in. But we then went and said, right, okay, we need to go and really engage with the rest of our teams on this and really get from them, what does it mean to work at Virgin? And we did some really cool stuff, as you'd expect. We did a big listen day across a number of our different sites. We really heard firsthand from our people about what was the good, the bad, the ugly of working at Virgin. And it reinforced those 3 traits around what does it take to be brave? And we used our people's words to describe it, not corporate language, which I have a kind of real aversion to, because people don't believe it. Yeah, guess what? They read it and think, huh? Yeah. What do you mean? How does that impact what I do? Yeah. We actually use proper language that the average person looks at and goes, oh, okay, I get that, and I can really relate to it. And we came back around, being visionary, being human, which being human is a particularly strong Virgin trait.
What does it mean to be human? What did you hear from the team, and what does it mean to you?
Oh, it was so what was just so reinforcing was our teams used words such as I can just be myself, I can be who I am, I can say what I want to say, I can wear what I want to wear, I can show up and I can have fun, I can feel sad, and that was that's been a kind of strong kind of cultural description of Virgin in whichever Virgin company you go to. And I said earlier that I was at Virgin Atlantic for a while, and that was my very first impression of working within a Virgin business, where that was just so strong, of that real sense of you can be who you want to be. And it's not just the rhetoric, it truly, you can turn up who you are. The other part was about really caring, a real warmth and really caring for individuals. And that care, again, comes out in, I think, both some of our people policies, the way we do business, how we put people first. But they were some of the themes that came through, and it was really believed. And we, as you'd imagine, in our big lesson, we had loads of Post-it notes up everywhere where people had written exactly their words, how it felt. And the themes were just so strong, and they were so anchored around that. And it was very reinforcing. And then I think helped us go and say, right, let's go and now we've got these 3 traits that we've clearly articulated. Mm-hmm. Let's go and take away some of the other noise that I guess some HR functions are known for going to go and create lots of other different frameworks. Actually, let's just pull that all away. Let's just keep it simple, and let's just anchor around. That's what, when we're at work and we show up here, what are some of the traits that we really want to kind of hold ourselves to?
Yeah. And when I think about what it means to be human, it's also inclusion. I think that's a big element.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's that shows up in lots of different ways. And again, for me, it's not only being inclusive, but it's also really creating that strong sense of belonging, where people actually feel they can feel and look and be different, but belong within a community, a group with those differences, but really belong. Because sometimes you have to watch that by being inclusive, it's because you're all more similar. So you feel more included because you're actually with other like-minded people. So sort of really understanding that difference creating inclusion, but also that really strong sense of belonging as well, which I think opens it up to really think about putting yourself in other people's shoes about what will they need to have to really go and belong and be part of this community, this team, this business.
Yeah. I was interested when I saw the visionary one, because I'm sure like the average employee, if you ask them, they wouldn't say, they maybe not say visionary. You know, so when you say visionary, what does it mean to be visionary?
Yeah, so this is about being innovative, experimenting. This firmly comes back to our founder, and Richard Branson's influence, and he's done this for 50 odd years. How do you go and really think about what is the art of the possible? What could you go and do? What could you go and disrupt? Why are we accepting things in the way they were? And I think, his history is, and his impact is kind of well documented, but it's that kind of constant relentlessness to think about what impact could I go and have? And so we are, being visionary is a big word. And so again, in some of our articulation of it, we're helping people that might be, I don't know, in the tech team, whatever, think about, well, actually, what could their part be in making a difference or doing something different that's different to how we normally do things. So we try and break it down to being really relevant to someone that holds, an important but kind of regular job, rather than believing it's all you've got to be in some big strategic leadership role to be visionary.
Yeah, I love that. And visionary and brave, and it also encourages like that psychological safety that we're encouraging you to be visionary, be brave, try new things. That's how do we disrupt ourselves and always challenge the status quo, which is what you need.
Completely.
Especially in this day and age. I love that. Could you talk about some of the, I know obviously Virgin Atlantic, for example, is a long-standing ally of the LGBTQIA+. There's a lot to remember there now. Could you just talk about some of the work that you've done around that?
I right from the start, it's been a advocate and an ally of that community. And I sort of go back to 2019. There was the first Pride flight, which was, I could tell you hot tickets, where it flew from London to New York to go and celebrate 50 years of the Stonewall uprising in New York. So that was like a real moment and very kind of symbolic to just show how important as a business, how much we stand up for our LGBT rights. That's really critical. We've also done things such as we fly out to the Caribbean, and we've challenged some of the areas we've flown out to where they haven't been so open to business, that actually they haven't been so welcoming to that community. And so we've gone and partnered with businesses to go and promote the importance and the value of being open to all in business. So pride ourselves on that. And we've received some good, I think, recognition in our voice and our impact, and really demonstrating what we mean by that. And I think we've shown that by encouraging other countries that are maybe maybe less open-minded to where we would want them to be.
And I remember seeing in the news, because it kind of made the headlines when you announced about removing the requirements for your people to wear gendered uniforms from the planes. I remember seeing that all over the news, and I think when I spoke to your team, they were like, we have like 100% increase in applications. And which is pretty incredible.
To be honest, it was. Virgin Atlantic anyway was a go-to place for, all people with all sorts of individuality to go and truly go and be themselves. It was another step to go and say, look, we really recognise individuality. And typically, especially within the airline industry, there's some really strict uniform rules, and in particular around what to wear, gender specific. And so we kind of busted the gender neutral. So actually you can wear whatever you feel comfortable in. We also, things like, historically tattoos needed to be covered up. We said, no, actually, you be yourself. You be yourself. The important thing is how you look after your customers on the flight and how you create an amazing experience. Whether you have tattoos or whether you wear, you identify a different gender and want to wear, you know what, you can be yourself and you'll actually be better, and you'll be even better with your customers. And so that's definitely had a positive impact. And if you go and look at engagement figures for Atlantic, as well as their inclusion stats, they're really high. No surprise. I think what's amazing is then the wider ecosystem it impacts, like you say, with 100% uplift in job applications. It suddenly becomes, you have an impact on the talent acquisition, people wanting to go there. And, it's very positive in lots of other areas, not just with the policy that's been changed.
And also the experience that the customers have, right? They're going to have people that are happy, excited to be at their job, doing what they do. And that ripples all the way through. And also it's a good example of it's great to have your values, but how are you practically implementing those? And that's a good example of the company living its values and actually putting policies in place that have actual long-standing impact as well. Another thing that I came across, which was interesting, which not many companies, in my experience, do a lot of work on, is the campaign you did around dyslexic thinking. And I love that. So could you share a bit more about that?
Yeah, well, it started a couple of years back with our founder is dyslexic, and it was pretty clear with some of the research that had gone on and a lot of work that Richard personally sponsored with charities and organisations, for example, Made by Dyslexia, that's created a lot of it, to really go and I think break down some of the taboos around neurodiversity, and then in particular around dyslexia, about actually the strengths it does bring. And as we go and term it, there's superpowers that sit with that. And we started this amazing movement, I'd say, where we talked about actually how do you go and promote and recognize the value of that the skills that come with it if you're dyslexic. And we had such a brilliant response from many people across our Virgin companies that people came forward to talk about their dyslexia, what they felt it brought to them in terms of the enhancements they did in their roles, what was the kind of extra magic that came with it. So internally, it was amazing. But what I think we feel most proud of is the impact we've had externally. So I don't know whether you're aware, Chris, but with the work that we went and did, we actually got dyslexic skills put in as a recognizable skill within LinkedIn. So amazing.
Really?
And and so when we first launched that, about 10,000 people went and clicked dyslexic skills as one of their as part of one of their skills, along with everything else.
That's so good.
Yeah,
I love that.
And now we've got about, I think, 25,000 people on LinkedIn that have selected that. So that in itself just starts to normalize it and start to say, no, it's not different. There's a problem with neurodiversity or with dyslexia. Actually, this is a real positive, and this is a real skill. And in fact, we've had that terminology put in dictionary.com as well. So it's starting to. Yeah, we feel proud that we have an impact both internally. We know internally people can show up and show those differences, but having an impact with actually wider across society and with how other employers view it, we feel is really positive. So we feel particularly proud. And in fact, Made by Dyslexia is just launching for later on this year some training that actually will help people, teams, leaders go and understand it more. So actually, it's not just about the person that is with dyslexia that has to sort of, not say fight their cause, but promote it. But actually what's really important is when your line manager, your leader really understands it and understands the powers of it. So we're doing some great work in collaboration with them around launching that training as well.
Yeah. I think it's like personally really, like I struggled to read and write growing up, and it was something I was embarrassed for a long time. I didn't learn how to read until years and years after my friends, and I used to stay behind school and I used to get bullied because I used to have to stay behind and do different classes and stuff like that. And even going into business for the first time, I was terrified about having to write an email or write a proposal or all those things, and it took me a long time to overcome that and ask for help. And I created templates for myself to help me in terms of my artistic and I was very creative and innovative in my thinking, but I didn't know that I didn't understand, and that wasn't value. Now I lean into my strengths, and I have I have incredible people that are strong at the other things.
And I was going to say that's amazing to hear, and we know so many people focus on the difficulty part, and that stays with them for a lot longer than you would want it to, because they maybe haven't worked that through, and it can have such a profound impact, can't it? And actually, like you say, it's doing some of the interventions you've done where you know where your strengths are, so you focus on those, and then you sort out interventions to help you on the parts you're not so strong, and then that's a super skill in itself, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting when you can lean in and discover these are my superpowers. And yeah, so I'm glad to hear that, and again, like some of the things you just said are like actual things that are making changes, policies, getting in the dictionary, LinkedIn, massive steps. Another thing we spoke about, which was before, was about Virgin Voyages. I've actually quite have a few friends that work on cruise ships and stuff like that, and they've always told me it's not the easiest. I think a lot of people think, oh, cruise ship, I go on a cruise, I go to a different country, this is amazing as well, but it's not. It is an amazing experience. I don't want to say it's not, but it's also comes with its challenges. So can you talk about some of the ways that you kind of disrupted the normal rules of cruise working?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And look, we feel, again, pretty proud. We feel this is really Virgin, really changing business for good. When we were getting close to finalising, creating Virgin Voyages, and really thinking about actually what's the experience, what we need to do for our employees on those ships, we literally, there was just no barriers at all. And we wanted to disrupt some of the kind of norms, as you've talked about, because, cruising as a job is really tough. I mean, typically, teams are away for 6 months at a time, sailing to very glamorous places, and the customers are having a very, very glamorous time. But it's pretty tough if you are working on the cruise ship. And we were really aware of that and wanted to be differentiated. So actually, we could attract talent that was saying, no, we want to go to Virgin Voyages, not necessarily some of the competition. So there was things such as, right from day one, all employees are given free Wi-Fi on the ship, which might sound really obvious, but actually, if you start adding that up on a daily amount, it's unaffordable. What we know is that people can feel really isolated. Yes, they're on a ship with everyone else, but actually that's their moments where they feel most isolated from their friends and family that are unsure. So being able to have that free Wi-Fi that has, total connectivity when they need it to go and connect socially, with their kind of support network, was really important. So that was just a given. Things such as, which I think this is brilliant, historically, if you're in a relationship, with another employee on a cruise, all separated out. No, if people are in a relationship, they're together, they can have a shared cabin. That, again, we're just, we're just being human. We're recognizing they're human beings. Yeah. And then actually they're going to be, if they're happier, because actually they're spending time and able to live with their partner, they're going to be, I tell you what, a lot happier with then the experience they create for their customers. And then just I'd say, I mean, you think they're almost hygiene factors, but again, really important. Just things such as free laundry services, free cleaning services, and for their personal space, just the stuff that makes it easier, so that they're not needing
have to worry about that, right? They can
exactly, yeah. They
can focus on their job, and
yeah, exactly. And I think it's sort of that balance of recognizing it is tough conditions, because not everybody can cope with going away to work for sort of 6 months at a time, and therefore, what are some of the important things that maybe historically or other organizations have thought, oh no, absolutely, we've got to keep really strict rules on it. We actually think by lessening that, by literally putting your people first, that just makes them in the first instance feel cared for, loved, part of a family, and therefore they anyway just go on and focus around their roles and what's the experience they can create, because they come from a place of feeling contented and satisfied and well looked after. So I think it's a really simple equation, but it's amazing how many organizations don't come at it from that perspective. And I guess we pride ourselves that we do.
Yeah, again, it goes back to those values.
Exactly. It is.
It all starts there,
Being
right?
human.
It's being human,
I know.
right? Because
I know.
everything you just mentioned isn't like a fancy policy, or it's just simple. You're mentioning the fact that these are simple things, but by nature, those are the things that are most impactful on someone's life,
Yeah.
and what it means to be human, right? Connecting with family, friends. That's part of what it means to be human. You need that connection as well.
Something I really love. We have it at Virgin Money. They've done a whole load of work about creating a life more virgin for employees. The one thing that they're doing, which I just think is brilliant and should get some of my peers to think about why we have what we have, is as part of a life more virgin, they've removed the majority of their people policies and said, no, we are all adults. We all come to work and I trust you to make the right decision. And you think about how many, and I'm sure there'll be a few listeners thinking, you go and have a look at how many people policies you have and why you've created them. And over the years, they would have been built up with good intent, but all these rules and, conditions and actually Virgin Money completely flipped it the other way and said, no, we're going to remove all of that because we're going to trust you because guess what? You're an adult, we employ you. So therefore, we know you want to do the right thing. It's a very, very tiny majority that don't want to. The majority want to. And I just think psychologically, that real high trust, again, treating someone in a really humane way, trusting them as an adult, because guess what? They're a fully functioning adult outside of work and take some really big decisions. Why would they not do the same at work? So I think, we sort of, you see that red thread go across in a lot of the decisions and how we run things across our different Virgin companies.
No, it sends a very clear message, doesn't it? And for so long we've like punished the many for the sins of a few people, right? And it's like, I love that. Again, it's more that the message it sends, right? The trust factor, like you're saying, and that in itself speaks volumes. Those companies that say, okay, we don't, rather than having a policy, well, you can figure it out with your manager, have a conversation and figure out how you're going to work together, how you work, when you work, the way you work, and like, oh, okay, great. I don't actually they actually trust me to do my job, which is obviously I think I personally believe everyone goes to work wanting to do a great job. I don't think anyone wakes up and goes, I'm going to be terrible today. And go and do that, right? It's everything. It's society around them. It's the company. It's the culture. A lot of factors that come into play that cause that.
Certainly
as well.
Does.
It's a bit of a big question, just randomly came to my head. Like, you shared so many things, but like, what would you say you're most proud of?
Oh, that is a big question. On a personal level,
on a personal level,
on a personal level, it would be the environment I think I've created for many people to thrive. And I guess the impact is most apparent for those that are either in my team or work closely with me. And then, depending on, sort of how far out that circle goes. But I pride myself that I think I've always tried to be, really authentic. What you see is what you get, and create the space and opportunity for people to really thrive. And I do that whether they're in my team or not. And I just feel proud about that. And that might feel small in the whole scheme of things, but it's just something that's stuck with me. And I can sort of look back over the years and see people that have gone on to go and be amazing in their own personal careers and personal sort of decisions, or they've kind of majorly grown in confidence, or they've developed their skills out further. I just find that really satisfying. And clearly, as my roles changed, I sort of think across a whole organization and how do you create the right conditions for whole teams and whole businesses to flourish. But on a personal level, that sits with me very dearly with, people I interact with on an everyday basis. I always come back to that core of, how can I help them be at their best and probably get to push them to go and be better than they ever believed they could go and be.
Yeah, when you see that, that's really what it's about, right? Like, when I first became a leader, I never really understood that. Like, because before it was always Chris being an individual contributor. And when I kind of look back, if I ask myself the same question, it's like seeing that growth, people, as you said, doing more than
Yeah.
more than they believed they could, and like seeing the impact a smile and that has. How does that make you feel when you see people thriving, and the impact that has and the ripple effect?
Big question. I have never been asked that. I just have a really strong sense of, when I say satisfaction, that's too light, but a real sense of purpose and a difference that I've made. It's kind of a really warm, it's so deep inside me.
Yeah, I know.
It's like that sense of, I love watching it. I always think, oh, that's so exciting, especially if you come across, especially when I've seen people that, I don't know, I feel I've had an influence at some point way back, and then I see they're off doing something and I just think, oh, that's great. It's great. I just find it very heartwarming.
Yeah,
that
it's hard to describe, though,
really
right?
confident. Yeah, it is really hard to describe.
I asked you how does it make you feel. You're like, even I was asking myself as well when I asked you, and I was like, it's hard to describe.
Yeah, it is. I mean, just it's just amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing to see it, and I think it's wonderful. It's wonderful to see it.
Yeah, love it. You're like, Chris, I'm gonna have to think about that more now.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Wait, who's gonna ask me that again?
We're gonna start crying. We're gonna start crying on the podcast to get really emotional. Listen, it's been really fun having you on the show. I appreciate it. I'm glad we managed to connect. And before I let you go, what advice would you kind of give to those CPOs of tomorrow, those HR leaders of tomorrow that are going to be sitting in your seat one day? And then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of go back to probably what I've talked about, as in the very strong need to be human and to really, really be leaders in their field around the importance of people within a business. And, I think if you're in a CPO role, you're in a very privileged position. You're working with the rest of your peer group, and make sure that your impact and influence is heard, because I think it can, the ripple effect and the impact on the overall business and on your people that are within it is enormous. So, I sort of go back to the traits I talked about, being visionary, really not stopping still, pushing the boundaries, being brave, taking yourself out your comfort zone. You have to. I mean, that's it's just a given. You've got to go and do that. Keep trying different things. Doesn't matter if you fail, keep trying different things. And then that final point of being human, you just have to, because that's the way the world's going.
Yeah.
And if you don't care, if you haven't got that element, the balance has gone the other way. People are making their own decisions. They will go to places where they feel cared for and they can be themselves. They're not going to tolerate staying in organizations where that's put further down the priority list. Yeah,
love it. Well, listen, I appreciate you coming on. I love everything you're doing. Really happy for you. Congrats to you and the team. Obviously, it's a journey, not a destination. So it's just a beginning. And I wish you're laughing. You're like, oh, I've got so much work to do.
Not at all. But that's great. And thank you, Chris. Thank you so much for inviting me on, and loved our conversation. It's been great to see you.
No worries. I wish you all the best until next week.
Thanks a lot. See you soon.